Hi, Frode. I'm eating, so you might hear me chewing.
I can, well, I can see your face, but and hear you speak a little bit.
Ah, that's good. You probably wouldn't want to watch me eating.
Of course. Just going through a page here, do some quick edits that I'll share in a minute. How are you?
So I discovered that apparently Stanford University did a clone of ChatGPT, and I'm in the process of downloading the weights for it for the 13,000 whatever it is, the larger model. I already have the small model downloaded, and that's working. So I'm trying for the big model, and it's very, very slowly trickling in the background. But it lets you chat interactively with the thing from the Mac terminal.
Oh, I have a Mac taskbar, toolbar, all the way at the top of the screen for that. And that's really quite cool, actually. It's called Mac GPT. Yeah, Mac GPT. This is update available. So how do I do that? Anyway, oh, here's Mr. Anderson.
Hi.
I'm eating. You wouldn't want to watch that.
Hey, Mark.
Hi.
I'm just putting my final touches on something. 1 second. Boom, boom. Yeah, and I think that's good. I also have a date for a future of text potentially, which we will need to talk about, see if how it works for everyone. Let's see who joins today. I started making a video on how the map thing works compared to using AI, and it just went back and forth. So I did a really brief write-up here. Does it look clear to you? Obviously, don't waste your time reading it, but just in general.
Looks pretty.
Lots of screenshots.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of I wonder. The first bit makes sense. I suspect, based on it from experiences, people may not make the leap from the first part to the second. So yes, they'll get that, join A to B, but quite how that turns into the map at the end, I find people struggle with that because it's just not it's not something that they're exposed to, and it's obvious after the fact, but it oftentimes isn't to a degree that surprises me, put it like that.
Yeah, I did write it though. Okay, under the heading map view, is it the mapped view? Is it clearer now? Just the text right under there?
Well, I haven't read in detail. What I'm trying to say, we're talking two separate things. It's not about what you thought you were writing; it's their ability to understand it,
But
which
that's
often
why
don't
I'm
go.
asking
It's, in other words, it's not your failure. It's not because it's written badly. It's that
Mark,
sometimes
that's
people
why I'm
may need more
asking.
scaffolding.
That's why I'm
Well,
asking you.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet, so I will read it now,
Yes,
fully through.
That's why you are consulted, Mr. Guru. Fabian, I was just mentioning to Peter and Mark that we may have a date for the symposium. I just tweetified it to you. The 4th of October. In London. What do you all think?
I should be around. I certainly think I'm around and about on the 4th.
Well, as long as I can connect remotely, it's fine. Of course, with my elder care responsibilities, I can't travel up to London.
Yeah, that sucks, but you know, reality. But thank you, Peter.
So I'm getting lost at step 1, where I'm defining a concept because I haven't been told what a concept is.
Can someone slap Mark for me, please?
Well, I'm not joking. I'm sorry.
and I
I've
am
read a lot of
joking.
documentation, and this is the way it rolls.
Mark, I am joking. I think that's a fair point. Okay.
It's all right. The thing is, so we don't know what we're doing yet. I mean,
No.
the problem is, yeah.
Mark, no. I was sorry. I was being a bit defensive and trying to be funny, but just going to write a sentence. Obviously, this is not what today's session is for, but
Sure.
where we're filling in, I'm very grateful for your help.
One thing that might confuse people, when I'm looking at the example, like, let's see, the third example under the map view, someone might look at that and read it as Hamilton being a fan of Hamilton.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah, you're right. That's actually a good point.
Yeah. The old left, right, top, down. Yeah. I mean, obviously, once they've used it, that will be self-evident. Yeah.
All right. I'll just do all the work again then. Great.
No, it's all right.
No.
Sorry, it always sounds harsh. I think
Mark,
the issue is
Mark,
that
I'm just trying to sound funny. Of course, Peter is right. I will do it offline. Again, he has an absolutely valid point. Sorry,
Okay.
Brandel. We're just looking at a thing here while we're all gathering together. And also, there's a proposal for the future of text on the 4th of October. How does that sound?
I think that sounds plausible. I think I should probably be in Seville in late September. So I don't know if I would try to tack it on to the end there, but that's the W3C annual meeting. So I think that's a fairly high priority.
I was about to quit
Hopefully.
seeing your barber.
What was that?
Going to see his barber.
That's right.
That's important. I mean, look at the man.
Right.
Yes. Right. Okay. So that's a priority. Should we just nail that down? It's the only day that Vint is able to make it. And I made it very clear to him that if he can't make it, that's just not a big problem. He's been to so many. And of course, we're happy to have him. But, you know, we don't want to stress him. But he did say that daytime that day, he will be in London. He has a dinner and that's it. So what's the feeling in the community? No reason why not to do that day, right?
No, I'm not aware of. I mean, it's too far away for me not to know that there's a particular thing. Like I said, there's TPAC. So the big events for me this year are TPAC, obviously things like the Worldwide Developers Conference. But everything else that I'm aware of is sort of sooner than that. Like we have things to do with WebGL and immersive web and things like that. But they are within the next couple months.
Okay. Just saving the files here to fix what Peter pointed out. Sorry about this. I look a bit distracted, that's because I am. That's the problem with good cameras these days, isn't it? So I do have a big other question for you, and Julio Schenberg, Softspace. Have you guys tried the new release?
I haven't. Somebody's going to give me a Quest 2 soon, so I will use that as an opportunity to see what the Quest 2 can do, and I plan to try to get into a. Does it work on a Pro as well?
Does it what?
Does it work on a Pro as well?
Yeah,
Quest Pro.
I think it works outstandingly well. I think it is an absolute game changer. It's not a place where you can do all your work yet, mostly because import and export isn't that smooth, and there aren't that many things you can do. But in terms of the experience, wow, it's just absolutely incredible.
That's cool. Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't mean this in a derogatory way. It seems to have implementations of all of the obvious things that I want to see, like being able to create a force-directed graph of a minimal spanning tree of a directed acyclic graph in 3D in MR, having the ability to kind of scale and manipulate those nodes. So like it looks good insofar as like it has all of those things that I know I want to do, and it would be probably at least as useful to the Ilios than it would be to try to do it myself. So yeah, I look forward to it, and thank you for the nudge.
The thing that I found outstanding is related to one thing that you actually did, Brantel, because I often bring up the Bob Horn moving the thing, the mural. So what this does is, and you know, you can see the videos, but the videos are awful as they need to be, because this is about interaction. By the way, Fabian, have you had a haircut? You look different.
As long as I look better, then yes.
Okay. I didn't put gel in my hair today, so maybe that's why I'm looking at you guys more. But anyway, so the thing about the environment is, you know, it works. If the device has been sleeping for a while, it doesn't matter. You put it on, boom, you're in the space. It's nice. It is black background, even on the Pro. I don't know if you can change that. I don't actually care. It seems to work really well. And the magical thing is that whenever you grasp your hand, that means you have grasped onto the workspace. So it is on the Pro. I don't know about the Quest 2, but it's so incredibly accurate and well done. So I just put almost anywhere, grasp my hand. I don't have to see it. None of this early VR experimental stuff. Hold it. It goes up, it goes down, it goes forward, it goes back. Instantly, smoothly, fluidly. It's absolutely incredible. If you grasp both hands, then you can twist the environment like this. You can scale it. So the basic interactions are wonderful. It's the same kind of feeling as when we first go into a lobby on the Oculus, when the room is completely stable and we're a bit shocked. It's that. I haven't figured out how to do much in the environment yet. But yeah, holy moly, it's the first real thing. That is like VR native.
So the ability to drag the world, kind of like holding down spacebar in Adobe products.
Yeah, yeah.
I imagine that the metaphor and the use of having a fist grab is similar to the shape of the icon within Adobe products, and given his background, it's likely that that's where the inspiration is. I mean, which is not to minimize it. It's interesting to think about those reference points, the anchors that people are using for these things. I watched a video by David Kirsch, again, a newer video by David Kirsch talking to some architecture students about the sort of metaphors of existence and how they sort of impact on computing, or how they ought to and how they don't adequately yet.
I don't know about that. Obviously, I'm not qualified, obviously, to say that, but it seems when I was doing my VR experiments last year, one of the things I wanted to do is just by default have a normal monitor. So it made sense that to scale it in one direction, grab one angle, scale it at the corners to change the size. So maybe something more naturalistic. Fabian, sorry.
I'll try to briefly share just one window. Let me know if you can see it.
Can't see.
It is just code. Honestly, I'm a little bit lazy, so you'll have to trust me. But that's the code to do roughly the same. So it spawns a little sphere if instead of picking text or code, you pick something empty. So there is nothing around basically to interact with. And from that sphere, you can go and move like this. And it's moving the environment. Right now, I'm cheating. It only moves forward. So it's not that good. But it basically, instead of moving you, it moves everything that is static around backward. But you can imagine, yeah, I'm not giving the demo proper, but it's like 20, 30 lines of code, more or less. And
Nice.
yeah, it works. Not perfect, but I think the gist of it is there.
Cool. I've written something similar. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I wrote something similar recently. I don't know if I showed, but I was so I have a clipped frame. I think I must have shown it. Hey David, where you have the ability to have a window, cropped window, and you have the ability to move that window, and then you have the ability to move the contents in that window. And in order to make that reasonable to use and to reuse the components of it, I have something where you can identify a region, like a part of the render tree, and then based on the pinch, it takes the relative positions, and you have the ability to constrain the dimensionality of the translation, so that it effectively becomes possible to constrain it to just a Y movement. And you can also change the exponent on the impact of the total delta, so that when it's at small range, it's a small translation. When the exponent is 1, then it's linear. When the exponent is 2, then it's small for small, and then gets increasingly large for large, so that you have the ability to have something sort of translate away as the square of the displacement. And the next thing, which I haven't done, is obviously to give it some inertial properties, so that you have the ability to have the inertial momentum and the inverse squared fall off of the translation from the moment of release. I think having the ability to tweak and tune based on having really terse representations of those things that are nevertheless tunable is really interesting and valuable. Similar to, and I'm not sure if I showed, but I've probably talked about before, having the ability within web to generate the interior spaces and exteriors, for that matter, that have Cornice molding and Cron molding basically baked in, so that you have the ability to create environments that are plausible, not perfectly realistic, but plausible, as being a sort of a prerequisite to imagining information within imaginable spaces. The dragging thing is really exciting, and it's one of those things that I think is a cornerstone of what's necessary for an immersive information space to be sort of tersely conjurable, invocable.
I think we need to experience it more. Just to say, you know, we need to prototype. And yeah, Mr. Prototypist, but just one brief thing, and that is something that became clear within 2 minutes of using this is that I wouldn't want to use it for everything, but these types of interactions felt really natural and useful to get in and out of environments. So this could be my library, so to speak, because one of the things you can do is just throw things and they end up in cool places. I would be able to want to go into Fabienne spaces through this to do specialist work. So we talked a year ago about having different rooms. These rooms, as it turned out, because of motion sickness, probably you don't want them to be virtual rooms that you traverse using walking joystick or, you know, having a huge, massive office. Having virtually like this, literally windows, but in a VR environment could be really cool. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So the point I want to jump right away is precisely what you mentioned about having a big ass office. I did not implement this until today because I really don't want to. Like, I want to actually physically move because I really think that's a key asset of VR that you. I'm lazy, and if I don't want to waste time and energy, then I have to recall and think of the optimal path. And I'm afraid that everything that's done virtually and teleportation and all and moving all the environment like this kind of breaks that not that capability, but that benefit, let's say, from VR. Still, I have to be pragmatic. My office is not huge. It's a tiny thing. And quite often, indeed, if I want to interact with things that I, let's say, push away from the immediate space, I need to move the space around. So I honestly, I implemented, I didn't want to, I just got forced into it because in practice, yeah, there is no, there is no extremely large space that I can use as frequently as I want. Well, I mean, there could be, of course, I just don't take the resources for it. So to me, it's a cop out. I'm not saying it's not nice, and there are definitely a lot of good ways to implement it. I was thinking also with the discussion last time about the track point on the keyboard on the IBM old laptops. And I kind of enjoyed it. And so that's why I was doing it as a sphere that grows and appears so that you can move it and it bounces back a little bit again, like a track point. So definitely a lot of good things to explore. But I'm kind of still on the, I'm not as excited. It's just like being pragmatic about not having enough physical space to actually move around. But I still tend to think that an actual large space to do VR in is better.
I can't hear him. Can you? Oh, okay, you finished. Okay, that was just a weird cutoff on my side.
So I was thought that responding to your comment really about you looked into the soft space thing and it was really neat, but it wasn't quite clear what to do. This does seem to be the dilemma. This is what I sort of saw when I started playing around with Noda. And I know it's a creative app, but it's sort of interesting in the sense that it's got to it's at a stage of stability where you can do something with it. Okay, it's not free, but and this sounds exactly what I thought when I saw that. There's too little to know what you're doing when you start. And what I've rapidly seen in that community and one or two other sort of tools for thought things is they go from stuff that's a sort of handmade size to suddenly wanting to name your language to import half the world and thinking, that's not where the problem space is. And we haven't got any sort of human-sized, that's a missing thing. And I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but what I sense is, and also channeling the thing that Brandel's pointed out a bit about, the Apple selling was, well, you don't sell them the tool, you sort of show how it solves the problem, if I'm channeling that correctly. So in other words, when I go into one of these things, I need to see something that's sort of humanly tractable and doesn't mean that I'm a database programmer or that I'm just trying to make a 3-item to-do list, because one's too small and one's too big. Brandel.
I absolutely agree, and it's emblematic and reminds me of a thing that has dogged my wife when trying to learn programming. I haven't gotten far enough into it with my daughter yet, but I suspect that she'll have the same issue just because she has the same opinions. Is that it's always really difficult with keywords, with the atoms of a programming system for her and other people to be able to distinguish between the keywords that are hard and fast, words like class and variable and number or float, and the ones that people have arbitrarily sprinkled in as by way of convention, like foo, much to my sort of hatred, foo and bar, and the things that are sort of value statements, but nevertheless have some kind of useful utility, like when you have the concept of an event handler, prefixing that with on or handle. So on mouse move or handle mouse move. That's a useful thing, not a necessity, but it has some value to you to keep things tidy like that. Whereas my as a prefix for things, that makes no sense whatsoever. And there's that sort of continuum of like atoms that are prerequisites for the platform for basic existence, going through into increasing sort of levels of opinionation into with no particular regard for the distinction between which things are mandatory, which things are sort of bedrock ideas of what you must adhere to within a system. And I think one of the challenges with VR, and this is something that Josh Carpenter, who was previously one of the sort of the most vocal voices about like people on the scene about what it is that we need to do for the UX of VR, said that we haven't figured out what the scroll bar is yet. I actually think this hand thing is a really good candidate for one of the scroll bars, but it's critical for us to get that bedrock infrastructure agreed upon or imaginable at least, in order to be able to figure out what space effectively is left once those atoms are worked out for the remainder of the sort of the expressive range of the medium. Because when you don't think about it immediately, well, I don't, you might be better. But like the fact that the presence of a scroll bar and a button per se within the sort of the atomic elements of two-dimensional computing precludes some things as a consequence of saying like, okay, these are the things that everything's made out of. So what's left for everybody else? There are lots of things that you could have done if we didn't invent those. And we're sort of still haggling over those basic details within XR, such that it's hard to then go, okay, here are the ground rules. What else have we got? Somebody's got to do it. I don't know when it's going to happen. Thanks, Rob.
So thank you, Brandel, for that wonderful introduction to last year's book. It really puts into perspective exactly what we're trying to do last year. And we wasted a lot of time, as we had to, and experimented. I think now we're beginning to see some of these things. So I think this particular interaction needs to be properly documented. So obviously I'll ask him to do another one in our book, because in 20 years, who knows what's going to be there. It may be one of the Cambrian explosion brilliant ones that disappears. But one thing, even though, Apple had Guy Kawasaki and other interface evangelists in the beginning for consistency, which is really important. Of course, there will become reasons to have breaks for that. And I'm really looking forward to how those breaks are going to be, because in a workspace library environment, you have one need for one kind of interaction, but when you're playing a shooter, doing a hand grab necessarily will mean something else. That's probably similar to some keyboard combinations that you don't even realize are different from app to app once you've learned them. So it'll be interesting where we are standard, where we're not standard. But now that Tim Cook seems to have pushed for the release of the headset this year, despite, we're probably going to see this earlier than we kind of should. But yeah, no, I'm just really happy to see these things. Fabienne, I'm not sure if you're still here because your face disappeared, but are you in dialogue with And please help me pronounce his name. Somebody who knows.
So he said in the chat, unfortunately, personal issue. I'll see you next time. So there's a good chance that
Oh, okay.
he's out of earshot or out of the ability to contribute orally.
Yeah, we will forgive him and not forget him. But he did make a. So there is a person called Andrea Cantro, whom I'm sure some of you know. I'm just going to do a little web thing, a little link for you. 1 second. Oh, that's weird. Okay, let me try that again. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I can't find right now, but apparently she wrote the book Thinking by Drawing, Visual Thinking. And Fabienne has managed to rope her in for presenting on Monday week. So how does that sound with you guys?
Sounds awesome. Is that Kandrovich?
I'm just checking here.
Looks like there's a TEDx talk
Can you
from
give
somebody called
just a
Andrea Kantrovich, or something?
Yeah. Drawing thoughts. She, yeah. If you can hear me, Fabienne, you misspelled. Oh no, you're gone. Misspelled.
He's
Terrible. Yeah, Drawing Thoughts. You have that book, don't you, Mark?
Me?
Yeah.
Which one?
Drawing Thought.
Do I? I vaguely rings a bell.
It's behind you. It's the one you keep showing us recently. No, I can't actually see it. Your camera's not that good.
Hold on a second. I should look at. I know what. I'll look at my reference manager, which actually happens to have most of my academic library in it. Who knows what you need these things for?
I shall gift you with a link.
Were you thinking of lines of thought? No, that's about medieval sort of tree diagram, line diagram, annotation line diagrams. So they look like like logic, coding logic trees. They just happen to be doing it in the medieval period. That's one monograph, but under Drawing Thought. No, unless it was an art book I had some while back.
Look at the link.
I looked. So she has a website, and Andrea Kantrovich .com is the one immediately above Froda's one, but it is the same book. Yeah.
It rings a bell. My wife might have it actually.
Are you sure you haven't been holding it up?
No, not that.
Which one is the Drawing Thinking one you have? I'm bamboozled.
I think it's just a case of the Venn diagram of the concepts being discussed in these things. It's largely a circle. I was reading from a couple of the books that I reading to my daughter at bedtime as a joke. Some of the things that I read from myself versus what I was reading to her, and she couldn't tell the difference between the cognitive science ones and the science fiction ones because they're also about what it is to be a mind.
That's really quite interesting on many levels. I'm reading a book about the origins and history of the Vikings, because obviously I'm Norwegian and Edgar should know a little bit of reality, not just whatever nonsense. And the first sections are about what we today would call the mythos of the Vikings. There's the trolls and the Asgardians and la, to use the English version. And it goes to great pains to explain that these were not like we may think of fairy tales of religion today. They were their reality. Mm-hmm. And also the English expression luck runs out is actually an old Viking thing. It means that there is a little kind of being in you that is your luck. And that being may choose to leave you. So your luck will literally run out of your body.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, so it is. So when you know, the way you're presenting to your daughter, she doesn't have the ability yet to decide which one's reality, which is great in this particular, you know, sci-fi and brain stuff. And
That
obviously,
sounds really cool. To that history of Vikingness and things, I read through, and I need to pick it up again sometime. There's a really neat book on the history of whiteness, and what it's being cobbled together out of, and which ethnicities and identities have been sort of variously included and excluded from the broad notion of whiteness, and what political goals have been kind of attached to it at various times. Really fascinating, just in terms of the relationship between Teutonic whiteness in particular and Anglo whiteness, and the distinctions that sort of run inside it, similar to the linguistic differences within English resulting from the trench coat. The cultural differences and the schisms that sort of still persist are really fascinating to be able to reflect on there too.
yes, and of course, America today is
Yes, of course.
absolutely insane.
Yes.
In the way that races are defined as being such and such. It's not even like stereotyping for a joke. It is like,
Mhm.
yeah,
I know.
we have issues in this country too. Do not get me wrong, but yeah, it's interesting how our different mythos. But you know, I really am so grateful when we look at these things, because this helps us maybe shed some skin of all the interactions we've built up over the years to you know, refresh ourselves a little bit. And that's why the soft space was so wow to me, because for the one thing that I know it does insanely well. I mean, it is like Minority Report, but so much better.
Wow.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
You said soft space?
Yeah, I'll put the video in the chatty box.
Okay, great.
He has presented for us, but only once, and I don't think that's enough.
No, it'd be great to get it back. I joined his Discord. It's fairly quiet. I haven't set aside the time to think about what to say to the folks in it, but he's got a Discord for soft space as well.
Well, I just put the link in the chat. Why don't we all look at it at the same time?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think there's any speaky bits that are of any great importance. There's one thing confusing in the video. When the grabbing thing happens to move, lines appear, and I thought you had to find the lines to grab them, but they just appear instantly wherever your hand is. So that could have been a bit clearer.
So I'm finding it wants to open in the Meta desktop app, that link.
Oh, okay. I don't have that app, do I?
Well, I
No,
had
it's
to,
just similar to App Store links within the Mac OS or within the iOS ecosystem.
oh, I see. It wants me to log in again. Okay, right.
Yeah, because it's an app. Apps have the ability to associate intents, so you should be able to decline it and say, no, I just want to see the web page. Thanks.
I'm
I'll
just
get
going to
that.
share screen. It's not the biggest, longest thing. Can you all see it relatively well?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, go back to the beginning. So I wonder if this is his office, in case he's too much of a lucky bastard, but fair enough.
No, this is a model that we've used in the past. It's a architectural home.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. So it's a VR space. I thought it was an AR space. Right. So here, grabbing the hand, doing all this stuff. And it's as smooth as holding a piece of paper. And then further, obviously, you have the laser pointer. There are many ways to do it. I'm not sure if he's got that right, to grab a distant object and do things with it. But he's got the physics really nicely. If you grab something and you drag it towards you, it kind of already knows that's what you want to do with it. So it's really easy to get it to you.
I
Have
like
you
this
used it?
deconstruction metaphor.
Sorry?
David, go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking, is this a live demo, or this is just are you using this right now for it?
I am. I have it
Wow.
on my headset, and I don't have my own data in there yet. And I'm just, the thing is, and this is why I want to get a job with Brundle at a different department at Apple, slightly different department. And that is, I really, really want to work on the intersection between traditional displays and augmented reality displays. I know Apple's going to work on it, but I'm concerned it'll be too much like Pages and Keynote, and like very kiddish and boxy. Because to be able to be working on your normal screen like this and then put on your headset, and that is just one of the screens, it's going to be absolute amazing game changer type of environment. And I'm so afraid that what we're seeing here is close to Doug Engelbart's 1968 demo. But when reality happens, like what's the name of the secretary at Park? I think her name was Susan.
Joy.
No, not a real person, but the one they used as a model for HCI. They said the real user is a secretary. Her name is Susan. Pretty sure it's Susan. Everything got dumbed down as if a secretary is stupid. Secretaries are not stupid. That's a whole different issue. And
This is at Park, not an augmenting human intellect.
correct.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no.
perhaps.
At ARC it was Roberta, of course.
Yes.
That's a whole great story. But yeah, I mean, put it on your headsets, guys.
Wow, I need to get a headset really badly. I'm gonna make that a goal for the next month or so. Things have been really tight, but I want to switch things around. I did want to let you all know that I've been kind of visioning in a new direction recently, which is really stepping back. And we've created a lot of tools that are ready, tools that are ready to be piloted. But at this point, we're going to start the Web4 Foundation. So it's really a foundation to help catalyze the building of this decentralized space above the web page. And we have, like I said, some tools that are ready to be piloted, but really wanting to step back so that it becomes a full-on environment. And the goal would be for, it starts on the web, but ultimately it would be great for any of the text or images in any of those layers that we just saw. To me, it becomes really interesting if the community can interact with those pieces of information. Or even have a presence. Like, can I have a presence? Meaning, there's like an avatar in real time on a piece of a paragraph of text that's on one of those layers that we just saw. Could there be a community that's going to have a meeting around that paragraph? And so, being able to have an overlay on top of these layers is where I see the technology going, so that we can actually not have to rely on the person who's building the model, whether it's myself or maybe a knowledge model builder or whatever, but more so the entire community can participate in creating knowledge around any of the information that's within these different layers that we just looked at in SoftSpace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something I built a while ago. I think I shared it with folks here, but it was something called AutoPeer, and it's a library. I've got a sort of implementation on CodePen, and it's a sort of a zero effort, sort of 2-3 line piece of code to be able to get automatic peer coordination between multiple participants on a given web page, so that if you have something that you want to share between them, then you have the ability to do it. The demo that I've got on CodePen is that if you go to that page, then you can see each other's cursors. And there's a short nonsense string just related to the name of the current web page that you see it on, that it makes use of. And that's really neat, because it means that you can have sort of the peer presence, as you sort of mentioned, David, of knowing what it's like, or having some sense of the presence of other people. I was looking through the work of a Carnegie Mellon University professor Chris Harrison from his grad school and undergrad days, and he had a similar reference called the, what is his one called there? I linked it at work. He called it the inhabited web.
Nice.
And it's really basic in the sense that it all it does is show you the mutual position of people's scroll bars within a page. But one of the things that I sort of very concretely encountered as I was trying to come up with some kind of mutual representation with AutoPeer is that it presupposes identicality of representation across multiple platforms, so that if you have a cursor,
What is
what
that?
that cursor pertains to is dependent on the resolution. You know, even on Wikipedia, that's very likely to be different between any two people. And so then what does it mean for a cursor to be in a place is an important question. Like, do you want to show that the cursor is most near a specific piece of text, or what? And then once you get to pages that have even the slightest bit of customization, you know, YouTube, we can be on the same YouTube video, but we are not going to have the same side feed, and we're not going to have the same banner ads come up. And there are various configurability aspects that will be relevant to us, like whether we want to have the captions on or off. And so the shared experience that it's meaningful to show is deeply challenging to kind of work out the bones of, and what is the appropriate amount of disclosure to an individual about what you're exposing to other people, leaving aside entirely for the moment the fact that maybe you don't want to show everybody everything about your online presence and exactly how you're experiencing things for various reasons. So like the trust aspect of it is thorny. Not to say that it should prevent people from thinking about it, but it's, you know, something that I'm acutely aware of as a consequence of having over the years broken aspects of Apple's privacy and having shown excitedly the Safari team, having them patched up pretty hastily afterward. I'm aware of the concerns that flow from it.
Wow, that's awesome. I'd love for you to send over the code pin as well. Just
Sure.
I'm imagining that probably on this Web4 Foundation site, we'll probably want to link to a number of different, you know, Web4. And you know, obviously, I consider any annotation to be Web4, although I think of it as kind of an early implementation of the Web4, because a lot of the annotation that I see is unstructured, and I think structured annotation with different types of media types to be attached to, but also to attach, would make annotation much richer. In terms of the presence, yeah, absolutely. I see what you're talking about in terms of cursor position. That's a low level of abstraction. Then just a visible list is a higher level of abstraction for me. So we started with just who's visible on the web page right now, and then the idea was that you know, we build in the idea, the possibility of saying, well, I want my cursor to be visible as well at the moment, and or not, right? And also we certainly build in, do I want to be visible on this page or not? You have to make that decision if you want to. You have to opt in to being visible on a web page, so that, you know, all of your presence wouldn't be visible to people. It would be more so really doing it when it makes the most sense. Because yeah, obviously a lot of the time you may not want anyone to know that you're on it. But if you're going to a website about something that you would love to get help with, or you'd love to have conversation with someone about, it's kind of like going into a cafe. If you look over at the person on the other table and they're reading the same book as you, then, you know, depending on your mood, you might actually want to go over and say something to them. Some other times you may not want to. So want to just kind of build in that.
Yeah, that's something that I'm really excited by. And, Apple doesn't talk about future plans, but because I'm not privy to those plans, then I'm happy to make a little bit of speculation. If you've seen the concept of shared tabs within Safari on particularly iPad OS and Mac OS, I'm really excited by that as the basic anchor for what a social web might be able to entail, in that like Apple actually is a social, like all of the companies, the big tech companies are kind of at some level all of the things. Although most people would say that Apple is not a social company, it's a consumer electronics company. But the reality is that there are intrinsically and necessarily aspects of social that come along with it. Just simply the function of group text message threads and things like that makes it by default a social network company. And but what's really fascinating is having shared tabs as the basis for social networks and having those sort of experiences and beginning to filter through. I believe it's currently available that you can see in a shared tab group with a fixed set of friends who's on which tab. I think that's really interesting as the first outgrowth of vision of a social web that starts small, starts very local, very opt-in. Maybe has upper bounds in terms of what it the number of people you could have in a shared tab group. You might not be able to have 10,000 people in it. But one of the things and so that prevents virality on the one hand, but it also prevents at some level context collapse, which is one of the greatest banes of the sort of the mass social networks that we currently experience. And so really interested in what that as a philosophy feeds into subsequent to that, in terms of the engineering complexity of introducing those as atomic elements catches up to the ability to dream out to what the subsequent features to shared tab groups are. So
Yeah. What's interesting about that? I mean, and one might not think initially that presence is about text at all, but to have a presence and to be able to be in the same place with someone and know that they're there enables you to actually start messaging and to start having conversation, which is where the text. So it's really an enabler of text in my mind. But yeah, we should. I'm happy. At some point, I'm hoping I'll get a chance to share a bit more about the book and share our demo product. Probably next month would be really good for me, and love to get you all's feedback for sure.
Yeah, we should put a date for that when you feel you are ready to show. So Peter made me get this book again. I had it many years ago, and then we have an iPad. We don't need books anymore, and it disappeared. I had to rebuy it. But it's interesting to read the early thoughts, and there's all kinds of era-appropriate visualizations in here. And it's a shame that Fabien is gone, because a lot of what he's doing obviously reflects some of these kind of spaces. And now that we have the ability to actually do this, I mean, we need another soft space demo and in dialogue, I think. So we'll see if we can make that happen. But a lot of this, I think we need to prototype. I think we're beyond talking, because talking makes its own myth in a way. When we talk, it's like we invented in our head, but it's kind of not there. So I'm excited by that, the opportunities.
I will just sort of loop round to the earlier point. An interesting thing about the problem of prototyping is in a sense the informational context and the problem of either having too little or too much. Because if you've got too much, everything's too difficult, or you end up in a very niche space. And if there's too little, you actually, it's difficult to sort of engage because you don't really know what you're doing. So you'll discover something. So my spidey sensor says the sort of sweet spot of having enough stuff to play with to help actually bring out the problems that one's trying to prototype.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's why I've been really obsessed with this.
Yeah.
Wait, what did that say? Couldn't read it.
It's a paper called "What Do Prototypes Prototype?" I've been building it in all kinds of different forms over the last
Nice.
year and a half in order to think about its informational content and also what implications the content itself has for potential presentations of it. I like me a good bit of recursion.
Hey, Fabian. He's back.
We're back. Oh, Fabian, I was just talking about you because the stuff, it's the soft space stuff and your stuff, this book here. It's so
Yeah.
nice to see, be reminded of this crazy stuff. But you're actually building it now. So, it's nice to look at it, but we need to keep going and doing more. We need to have at least one meeting over the next few months in headsets. Even if it's a Microsoft owned or Facebook owned room where we all look like cartoon characters, we need to have been there or something.
I mean, we can, if there is interest and capability, we can try to do like a meeting a month or something with a new solution or existing solution or whatever. And it can be like just the last half an hour, the last hour. But I would definitely be up for it.
What kind of headset would I need to make sure that I'm able to communicate in the right spaces that you all are able to access?
The
Quest 2
metaverse
is fine.
headsets. The metaverse headsets.
Metaverse.
Anything by
Okay.
Meta.
Yeah,
Anything by
Quest
Meta.
2.
Okay.
The Quest 2 would probably be good. You should be able to get them secondhand. They're sort of 400-ish US
Okay.
at the moment. New, you might be able to get them secondhand, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Their pricing strategy has been heartening to me in terms of understanding why Apple is better at pricing. It's just like wild. Well, because so Meta is wildly fluctuated with their pricing strategy. They're sort of they're priced below cost at times, and then they've lost their nerve, and then they've raised them, and then they've realized that they've overshot, and they've dropped them again. The Quest Pro, unfortunately, Frodo had to purchase for the equivalent of $1,500 US, and it's valid that it maybe cost that much, but like I always tell folks at Apple, is that like Apple is a good company and it has the ability to build the best phone that $1,000 can buy, and it does that. What it doesn't do is make the best phone that $5,000 can buy, which it would also be able to do, and it also would be able to probably make the best phone that $100 could buy, and it also doesn't do that. Quest Pro, I'm sure, is probably at this point near enough to the best headset $1,500 can buy, but it wasn't a valid thing for anybody to do at the market at that point. Frodo's purchase, thank you for that, notwithstanding, it didn't appear to move enough units for it to be a meaningful test of the sort of the market and capabilities and things like that. So it would have been better for them to make a cheaper thing that they could sort of test with. Anyway, Quest 2 would be great.
I consider the purchase of the Quest Pro the equivalent of taking classes as well in education, basically.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you get a ton out of it.
I don't
because
use
of the
it that much, but it
yeah.
makes it very, very real. A lot of what we talk about.
Definitely, that's huge. I mean, to that end, much cheaper than buying a Vario XR3, which is $8,000 plus $1,000 a year for the pass-through API license. So I'm glad you don't have to do that in order to experience kind of some of those things. People in automotive and various sort of for-pay industries have the ability to use that. I've used work before, but it's out of the price range of people who aren't actively sort of bankrolled or making money with it.
It is very strange, though, you know, going back to that Alan Kay quote that we should spend as much on our computer as we do on our car. Now that I have spent a ton of money on this monitor, it changed what computing is for me. It has literally opened my eyes. And, you know, there's so many interest for the kind of people we are, like, I remember Retina displays. Oh yeah, that's really neat, but I don't need to see my pictures that well. And then a friend pointed out the text is also higher quality. Are you kidding? I literally ran to the Apple Store and it changed what text is on a screen. You know, when it's not Retina, it's two different media. You know, when you read quite a bit, it's completely different. Yeah.
Because I guess UK hasn't shifted over in daylight savings yet.
This weekend, this Saturday.
Yeah, right. So that means that it's now 10 o'clock rather than 9 o'clock for me here, which means that it's starting to interact with my day. I'm going to have to drop at 5 after.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
fine.
we're all back on the same regimen next Sunday.
Yes. Yeah. So then it's back to you're having both of my hours on a Monday, but I need to drop it.
Because it's
Where
been
are you
on,
right now?
some years it's a week, and this year it's been 2 weeks. So that just adds to the general immigrants factor twice a year.
Yeah. I'm in California,
Oh, where?
Sunnyvale.
Okay. Yeah, I'm from Oakland, Berkeley area, but living in Tulum at the moment.
I love Berkeley, Oakland area. We've thought about moving there, but it is very far from Sunnyvale.
Oh, yes,
which
it
is a
is.
challenge.
And the distance isn't just, it's not just distance, but it's also the traffic time. If you're commuting, it's just so bad.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I thought you were going to say in perspective.
Oh, there's that. There's that too.
Yes. But that in a good way, right? Oakland
Yeah.
and Berkeley, it's a fresh perspective for
Yes,
sure.
Yeah. Sunnyvale. I mean, Sunnyvale happens to be where much of Apple is these days, but it's not otherwise a thrill. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm in California, I stay in Berkeley, and I usually go down, and yeah, it's nice, but it's stressful. I mean, Adam Chyer, he took the train a lot down, which I guess worked for him, but it depends. But if I was going to move back to the Bay Area, I think I would do somewhere in Oakland too.
Yeah.
Unless the commute to somewhere is just horrible. It is just insane, though, the Silicon Valley physical issue where so many people complain about the quality of life. It's not the quality of life, it's the quality of the hard work, because you go outside and you've got the most incredible nature right there. You have so many things. It's just, apart from the fact that it's on a quake zone, it's pretty perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So 4th of October, Future of Text.
In Norway or London or where? Or do we know? We don't know.
No, London.
And is Vint coming, or he's not sure, or no?
Yeah, he is coming. That's what we're doing that day.
Wow, congratulations. That's excellent. By the way, he did a positive review for my book as well. I was really pleased to get it. I mean, he did say he had concerns about scalability and implementation, but that he felt like it was something that needed to be further explored. I was really happy to get that from him.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm just emailing Vint and Ismail both, boom, so I don't forget. They have both, Vint has said yes, so I'll see if Ismail comes too.
I'm going to do my best to come. I think I can. October, that sounds like a reasonable time frame, and yeah, I will do whatever I can to get there.
Excellent. Brandel, you have to go, right? Yeah. See you next Monday. I'm going back to Norway for the weekend to see my mum again. She seemed a bit forlorn. It's kind of crazy, and also thinking about climate change, which of this course today is a big topic, but to go from here to there with a plane is really convenient and cheap. So yeah, can't do that too much in the future. Just had Bruce Horn texting on the side here saying he's getting really stressed at the new report that came out and what's happening in California.
The new climate report that came out, or
Yeah,
okay.
our survival guide. Yeah, I mean, we've here in the UK, we've had a very strange cold winter. And today I noticed, I don't know if it's the same in Southampton, Mark, but even though the temperature number is quite high, there seems to be cold gusts mixed in with slightly warmer air. It's been really odd. But I don't know.
I don't know. It's sort of comparatively Riviera down here, because I was just commenting on what a mild winter we'd had, apart from a couple of cold snaps, which I can tell by my coal stocks. Or smokeless fuel stock, should I say, more to the point. I'd explain, if anyone's outraged at the thought of that because I live in a listed house, which wasn't listed by me, I'm not allowed to have any heating that actually works in the modern fashion.
That is a problem here. Yes, you know, all these environmental things from the government, and then they bash up against exactly that. Are you not even allowed to put in air source heat pump like an aircon?
Well, I mean, I could in principle, but it wouldn't work in a house like this because you'd have to make it airtight, which would A, involve fitting windows of a type you're not allowed to fit, and B, would probably kill the structure because it needs to breathe. So these houses were never designed. I mean, this is Victorian, built by by Georgians rather, so late 1830s, and pretty much as it was in terms structurally. Yeah, they weren't. I mean, funny enough, they're remarkably cool or downstairs in summer and reasonably warm in winter. But they, you know, having sort of fully fitted treble glazing or something, yeah, you know, you can't do it at the moment. And anyway, I wouldn't be allowed to.
Just checking something, sorry.
Which is a law. Still, I quite like having an open fire still.
How warm or cold is it outside now for you?
Well, you'll have to do a mental adjustment because my mind's stuck in centigrade, but it's sort of in the high single digits.
Oh, so it's cold. Okay.
Well, you know, I was out working on our allotment. We have these sort of places you can effectively have a bit of farm/garden to grow veg in the sort of city, and that was out and actually in the full sun yesterday, doing things. It didn't seem that cold, and it's definitely got warmer. But it's very strange here because literally any short distance away, people have had snow recently. But because I'm right down by the coast, and Portsmouth gets, I think, the very last gasp of the Gulf Stream. It's
Nice.
just, you know, to the extent that, you know, here on the island, you might get condensation on the cars in the morning. You drive over the ridge behind, and it's a hard frost. So it's that sort of microclimate type thing. Yeah.
You're on the Isle of what?
The Portsmouth, which is an island. It is actually an island. There is a little tiny tidal creek that flows around the top, but it's actually one of the most densely packed cities in Europe. Oddly,
Wow.
I think mainly because the houses, when they were built, they packed them in because one of the things was the longest timber you could buy was timber condemned from ships, which was cut to a longest sort of length. So that was going to be the width of your house. So they tend to be long and narrow and hold a lot of people.
Nice. That's funny. So it's so close. It's an island, but it's so close to the shore, basically.
Absolutely. Yes, at the top end, I mean, it's sort of, you could stand in it at high water in the channel between the island and the thing. So I don't think many people think of it as an island. Yeah.
Okay.
And then again, during the lockdown, I realized I'd not been off the island for a year.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's good when everyone laughs about, islanders having very fixed views and being a bit insular. I thought, oh, I know what they're on about now.
Right. So, but it's not an isle though. It's an island. Isles are somehow differentiated as being more separate, or
No, I think that's just usage. I don't think there's a formal
Okay.
definition. I think as long as a bit of water goes around, it connects to the sea, it's treated as an island.
Well, I'm brushing up on my geography now.
I'll share a little exploration, or not even yet an exploration. I've been, I'm sure some of you have heard about the Microsoft integration with ChatGPT and GPT-4 and whatever, everything generative AI made by OpenAI. Regardless of how efficient I think it is, I feel I have a kind of duty and anyway desire to play with this kind of things, but in an open fashion, which ironically enough, OpenAI is not. And Microsoft obviously is not, so it makes a good alliance, but for me to tinker with, it absolutely does not work. But I noticed that I've been using actually for 3 years now something called Nextcloud, which is a little bit like Google Docs, or actually Google Drive to be precise. So Google Drive, you just put your files in it, and if you have Google Docs, then you can open a document like text or spreadsheet or whatever. And there are some open source equivalents like Nextcloud. So I'll briefly share my screen just to illustrate that. And also, while I load this to clarify a bit the point. So those are my files. I guess you can see it. And it's online on this address. And if I click on an image, I can see it. A video, I can play it. Let's say the Nextcloud community. And if I click on a spreadsheet, I can edit it directly. So again, I'm still on the web. I'm not in a native thing, but I can do all the usual, including saving, printing, downloading to whatever format. So that's done using, so Nextcloud is the file browser, let's say, and host. And when I click on this, it's called Collabora. And Collabora is just the part where you can edit the documents. I explained this a bit more in depth because I was wondering if I put AI, generative AI, which level of the stack should I go? Should I go just for the file system? Or maybe it's more interesting if I do this just like Microsoft is doing at the document level. And then I started to dig a little bit, what is Collabora, how to do plugins and all. So I don't yet have a plugin to show. I'll stop sharing. But I think that can open up some interesting ways. So we still collaborate on documents. They are not just text, as you've seen. There are rich documents. A document can have images and all that. And because there were a lot of alternatives to OpenAI, where basically you give a string of text, it gives back an image or a longer string of text that you can either host yourself, or there are APIs you can use, and basically you select your piece of your document, your presentation, whatever, send that to the remote server who is doing the processing or generating whatever you need, and then send it back. So yeah, that's been the little technical exploration for mostly today, actually. I mean, I've been working with this for years, but I want to learn how to extend it, how to make a plugin that does more stuff. I'm mostly, to be honest, still confused. Again, which position of the stack I should go to make a plugin. Yeah, that's been the little. I don't have a prototype to show. I mean, nothing interesting at the moment. Like right-click does show a bit of text, so not very exciting. But yeah, getting there. So yeah, because I think, for example, wikis, people are not necessarily that excited by wikis, even though I have a bias for it. But there is this kind of indirect, like editing Markdown or this kind of syntax might confuse people. So yeah, I'm learning a little bit how those web-rich document editing platforms, open source one work.
When you say extension, you mean a browser extension?
No, I mean an extension for the document editor, like the equivalent of Author, for example. It could be, I've done it in the past as an extension. So for my wiki, for example, so that we're working on any web page. But here I'm looking how it could be a bit more collaborative, for example. But yeah, for sure it can be an extension. Here I'm looking at specifically a plugin for the text editor, let's say, the document editor.
And so does this operate as your own personal AI? And it's like create your own personal mind of information that you've interacted with, and you can go back and work within whatever context you're looking at?
Not go back yet, but that's definitely, I think, one of the most interesting aspects, especially at the moment. These kind of tools, they don't have a huge memory or attention. So basically you give one sentence, you might remember the previous one or one or two before, but it basically drops the context. And between session, for sure, it drops the context. So I haven't digged into it, but I think, let's say, conceptually, in terms of tools, how you can give back the previous context or the minimum context to the tools you're currently interacting with, for sure is an interesting avenue. And it's for, like, when I use my console, the terminal, or any kind of tools, actually, history is like the most precious asset. So I'm indeed considering how to do this, how to give back the history, the context, the scope to these kind of tools.
Yeah, super important.
Because Fabien, have you given, I mean, an interesting thing I was thinking about as you describing that is that, you know, when you say, oh, so where do you integrate it, is thinking about maybe how we move to treat, you know, something like one of these AI sort of ChatGPT things as an actor. I don't mean a human actor, so not to anthropomorphize it, but just to sort of say that, okay, it's an actor and it has some responsibilities, like, you know, maybe holding on to the same answer, you know, from period to period. I mean, because, you know, with a human actor, if you ask them the same question, they keep giving you a different one, you may have trust issues. I mean, this is a fascinating thing, you know, about the wonder of the really wonderful side of sort of ChatGPT is all comes out fully formed. You're thinking, gosh, that makes sense, until you ask the same question and get a completely different answer.
Mark,
so,
have
yep.
you seen the Microsoft presentation?
No.
It's the one I emailed. I think I copied you in on it. It actually can tell you its reasoning.
You know, I saw you mention that. I haven't got around to it because I'm in a real clench till the end of the month for stuff. So I put an awful lot of stuff to one side, so I haven't got time to dive into it. But yeah, and I'm not raising the issue because there's some agenda of thinking it's bad. I'm just sort of thinking sort of how we start to move these systems, these clever systems, to the role of being an actor, albeit a non-human one, as opposed to sort of some authoritative binary source, because I think it opens the opportunity to have a better interaction with the output. Because at the moment, you sort of, you know, get given the answer.
I think that we are at a stage with AI close to where we were with the web in the beginning, because remember, people were saying, you know, oh, all these people are second guessing their doctors, their GPs, by going online, going on the web. And oh, what a terrible thing this is, because you can't trust the web. But of course, now we're living in a world where all the NHS and other official stuff is on the web. So it's become much more nuanced. So I think that's going to be something similar with excuse me, AI with different kind of channels. I mean, one thing I did the other day was I asked AI how to improve a word processor for students. It wrote beautifully, and it basically wrote what I had built in Author plus 2 things I can't afford to build. So that was not just random. It was actually quite shocking.
But very quickly, because the question I asked myself immediately when you sent that, sorry, and I see Van Patten has his hands up, but quickly, did you write down a list before you asked the question?
No.
Next time, it would be interesting to do that, because I think that might be interesting in situating the answer you get, which wasn't to say, I mean, because I read what you sent, I found it very interesting, but that was my immediate thought. I wonder what how well it came up against your take, because what you as you described it, you measured against whether it made sense, and a lot of it did. Sorry, Fabian.
First, I will. I don't know which one I should do first. Actually, let's. I'll address the anthropomorphic aspect. So before this, I studied AI before it was trendy, and I think it's one of the most interesting intellectual endeavor. And yet, at the moment, I sound very grumpy every day because I think a lot of it is bullshit. And I think that's what frustrates me, because I love the topic. So it's really hard what I see. I also understand that, for example, OpenAI is a commercial company. They were not at the beginning. Now the goal is more money. So to me, the anthropomorphic aspect is a marketing trick. Like, you would indeed not expect, and you would lose trust instantly if I were to just tell you right now I'm an elephant. Like, you can check, I'm not. So the problem is, you might still think, oh, there, he has a tough day, some personal problems, whatever. We can cope with that. If I was to be like a hammer and then it would bounce back, would not behave the same way, you would just not use it anymore. So I think there is here a lot of, like, they talk about hallucination. It's like, no, it's just not factually correct. It's like the good grammatical structure. It looks coherent, but it's just wrong. But instead of saying it's wrong or it's counterfactual or whatever you want to call it, they talk about hallucination. So I think that's a huge marketing aspect to kind of make it. It's not. There is the chat aspect, the natural language aspect instead of programming, which I think is actually good for onboarding. But in terms of actual performance, I think a lot of it is just marketing tricks by saying, oh, it's a person, it's not perfect yet, it's a student learning, it can pass this and that test. But I think it's very counter disturbing. It's going to slap back and come back, explode, let's say, in a couple of, I hope, months. Might take years, but I don't think it's a good thing to do this. It's just not a person. The other quick thing is just, I'm going to share my screen this time. I'll try to share just the window. Let me know if you can see it. So I'm loading. There are a couple of models, just like OpenAI, and including chatbots. One at the moment done by Facebook is called Llama. It's quite big, and you need like a research. I don't know. You need to ask for it nicely and tell your researcher, basically. And there is a smaller one called.
I can't see anything, by the way, Fabian. Can the rest of you see the screen?
No.
It's starting. It says it's starting.
Yeah, please try again.
Then I'll share the whole screen instead of just the window. It worked before or not?
Yes. No. We were just pretending to see your screen because it was so boring.
Fair enough. I see. I need to check. So I loaded the model. That's a
Still not showing up. Still not showing up. Sorry.
Yeah, it says you're sharing. It's just not showing us anything. Oh, no, that's you again. That's your camera.
Let's see, another try.
Oh God, I could see Mark massive, so that worked.
There it is.
Okay. So that's loading Alpaca, which is the, let's say, light version, and CPP for C++ to say it works on a normal desktop. You don't need like a gigantic machine. and I'm loading the model, which is 13 billion parameters. It's a 8 giga file, like a big movie equivalent in terms of size. And then I can basically chat for it, or with it rather. It's chatting back. So what do you think of VR? Useful or useless? I haven't tried this, so I have no idea what's going to come back out of it. But the point is, it's far from perfect. It's coherent. It might make sense. I might like it and then printing as something positive. The point here it runs. I'm not going to shut down my connection to prove it to you, but it works offline. I don't need to be online to do this. I don't need an API, and it means nothing leaves my computer. So you start to have this kind of models that runs on a, let's say, consumer hardware. That took me 5 minutes to set up. Okay, maybe more because I had to download the model, so maybe that was 20 minutes. That was like super quick.
I always love that it took you 5 minutes. I wonder how long it would take the rest of us.
Yeah, it might take a little bit more, it might take less, but in practice, it reached this point in time where I'll put a link in the chat where I got the model and all, but it reached that point in time where it's a matter of minutes. It's okay with a big connection and all, and I had just the right environment for it. But it's we don't need the same kind of trade-off, let's say, that we needed before, that we needed to give our data to I don't know whom to use, I don't know how. Here you have this kind of things like the same for translation, code generation, all this. There's been let's say, a kickback from the research community because OpenAI is not sharing their work. They're sharing an API to use it, but not how it actually works and thus how it can be reproduced. So I think it's a pretty positive response from the overall research community in the domain.
So in the interest of balance, of course, very, very interesting to have a model that you can have on your own system. I think what will happen with AI is going to be obviously quite amazing. I don't think that's really up for discussion. I think we all agree, but it will fit into how we do things in different ways. Like, you know, the evolution of the web was managing all your web links and all of that was a big, you know, bookmarks. That was a big thing for a few years, and who was going to win. Now we don't really do that. We have some tabs and then it remembers things and we have the autocomplete. It's going to be very interesting with very different domains of AI. Because in the beginning of the discussion here today, I think there was some comments on how much of AI just isn't very interesting in a strong sense. But when I send messages to my wife now, I do it on my watch, and it's the AI speech to text, which is, you know, a few years ago, that was research. Now it's normal. So that's just incredible. There will probably be a lot of conversational type AI, but also scaffolded AI, which is what I think you were talking about, Fabien, where you have different ways of entering your query or your prompt. Because yes, that's going to be a really, really interesting thing to design prompt systems. You know, where do you put in the different variables? How do you change the results? Yeah, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And now that AI is real in the strong sense, finally, it's something we can experience. And I have installed it in my Mac menu bar on top here. Just compared to what you did, I'm just going to show you how.
How do you define strong AI? It's not a term, just because I'm not familiar with the term.
I would define it simply as something which isn't in general use right now. It's an aspirational term. So how?
Well, historically, strong AI implied human level intelligence, whereas weak AI was more symbolic, able to explain itself, and an expert system kind of a approach to it. So
Yeah,
Strong
so-
AI basically implied that if you just scaled up an expert system enough, you'd get a human brain out of it. And the weak AI people would argue that no, there's a qualitative difference between a human brain and what you can do on a computer.
It's broken. There's an update now. Maybe that's what's required. But okay, Fabian, why don't you ask your system? How do you define strong AI? Because that in itself is kind of cool.
Yeah, I could do this. It's also on the, just to address Peter's point about scalability, that's also been the, how do you say, the trend at the moment. Like people say GPT-3 is like this, GPT 3.5 is like that, GPT-4 is like that. GPT-5 is going to solve every problem on Earth. GPT-6 is going to do that for the universe or whatnot. So there is this kind of, and a lot of people talk about the singularity at the moment, as if people were able to predict that the next model would be radically better than the previous one. Nobody has any idea. Like I'm rather confident about this, including researcher at the state of the art in the domain. People for sure can benefit from claiming, though, that it will keep on scaling. But we're starting, I think, to reach the point where we basically scrap the whole not the whole internet, but a significant part of the web. Some dedicated databases, some images and whatnot. So if it's true that this kind of models largely benefits from large-scale data, at some point we're going to reach, basically we would have exploited everything the same way that easy oil has already been harvested. We go to the North Pole because everything else is harder. We do oil mixed with sand because everything has been pumped before. So it's a little bit the same thing with this kind of models and the availability of data. So I'm just putting a warning there in terms of prediction of what's coming next. I don't think saying GPT-5 is going to be amazing helps at all. Hopefully it will be, and hopefully alternatives will be too. But at some point, we just need better techniques rather than just more data. And even if we do have more data, it doesn't say that it's going to be sufficient in order to reach human level intelligence or something else. And I will ask also and put back in the chat what's the answer from the board.
Oh, just wanted to expand a little bit on this theme of artificial intelligence and where we're headed. And I totally agree. It's going to be it is going to be amazing in many different ways. But I also find it very frightening. I think we already have many problems on the web that we don't know how to handle, like scams, abuse, false information. And I just don't think that criminals are gonna ignore AI and not use it to its fullest. So just like it can know us and help us autocomplete the best messages and doing papers exactly how we want them to, et cetera. I'm really concerned that it's going to be used to create the most compelling scams to attract us. And I think that we're just going to see a flood of information. It's going to allow, a beautiful thing is it's going to allow people who didn't have the time to put their art out into the world. And I don't mean art just in the visual. I mean, whatever art. And that's going to add to the diversity of viewpoints, and it should be a really strong enriching factor, but it's also going to make it so that marketers, scammers, people who are just trying to be influencers, et cetera, it's going to make it so that they can put out a lot more too. So I'm really concerned with what I'm thinking. I kind of call it the dead web. There was this theory about a couple of years ago that got very popular called the dead internet theory. And they were saying that we came to an inflection point in 2016 or 2017, and most of the web is now AI. Now, I don't think that that's actually true right now, but I think it's going to be true in maybe 3 to 5 years. You know, and it may not necessarily be that it's automatically generated by AI, but in 3 to 5 years, I think it's totally conceivable and probably likely that most of the content on the web, like 90 to 95% or even more, will have been touched by AI in its production.
Yeah,
And right
but
now,
it's
it's already
not-
in distribution.
It's
Mhm.
not that different now. I mean, look, on the Visual Meta website, I've added some quotes from people, and then one of the people I asked to send one is Denise Chimont Besserat, and she's the one who kind of discovered the origins of writing of cuneiform. And it started with this. It doesn't really matter where it started, but the point is 5,000 years ago, people were still writing nonsense that had to be verified. So of course now it's going to be an interesting level. There's deep fakes and all of that stuff. Of course that's going to happen. There's always been, and whenever you open an opportunity for good, you're also going to open an opportunity for bad, because you're opening a capability, you're opening a dimension. So I agree with your concern, absolutely. But the thing is, at this point in the history of the evolution of this planet, we are basically the sexual organs of computers, of intelligent computers. They can do everything except reproduce. We do that for them. And I say that as kind of a jokey way, as a provocative way. But the thing is, if we decided to stop the further development of AI or faster computer chips, even that sentence is stupid. Humanity doesn't have the mechanism whereby we can have a discussion to stop anything. Right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
cannot stop it. There's absolutely no, even if America, Biden and Trump came together, shook hands and say AI must be shut down, what do you think China's going to say? Oh, okay, cool. We get the advantage, right? It cannot be done. We're on a path of greater AI, greater virtual environments in metaverse, which will be good and bad as well. Our duty, I think, as quote unquote citizens, and people who can even look at the issue, along with climate change, is to accept that this is the future we're going into and do what we can to mitigate it, to arm people with the tools and knowledge and techniques to deal with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that there is an opportunity to re-envision how we think of the web, because we're thinking of it as this flat and static thing where everything is in silos. And I mean, I didn't really realize that the solution that I'm advocating, a meta environment over the web, would help with AI. But I realized that, you know, if you're talking about creating a new meta environment, you can talk about new rules of engagement. And I think there's this possibility of creating an environment where accountability, you have to be a human if you want to be considered a human, and you only have one account. So everything that you do, ultimately, it's tracked back to you, and there's no unidentified bots. So if there can be bots, I mean, and I'm just proposing that this is how we're thinking about it right now.
David, I think a lot of this type of discourse is California based. And I say that, you know, we talked about California earlier. I say that with a lot of love and respect. I've spent so many, I know you're not in California now, but just sitting in that beautiful air in the evening, having a coffee outside, maybe Palo Alto backyard or something, talking about the coulda, shoulda, woulda, and it should be, and then maybe there's a little bit of drumming. It is so kumbaya. It is so hippie. And it's pleasant at the time, but it just has no way of interacting with reality. That's my problem.
I think it's the only way to actually get to Douglas Engelbart's vision of moving from personal computing to collective computing. I don't think we can do it. I don't think it's possible within silos. on the web. We
I'm
have
not-
to add
I'm not-
another layer. I don't know.
I didn't realize you were talking about silos. I heard a lot of other things, but the thing is, you know, especially in the forum here, talking about, oh, this is scary and oh, this is going to happen. Yeah, of course we'll talk about it, but kind of important to. Anyway, Fabienne, stop me talking. Gosh, you suck at interrupting me.
With great pleasure, because I absolutely disagree. I think we have.
Oh, sorry, I'm losing connection to Fabienne. I can't hear him.
We see you smiling. So, couple of things why I think it's off. First, we don't have. First, AI doesn't exist. Okay, I'm going to keep it. It's just state of the art of software, a lot of data. There is nothing. There is no ghost in the machine. It's powerful. We can learn a lot. We can improve it, but that's it. Like, it's not. And also, we talk about machine AI, artificial intelligence, within it, machine learning, and like most people think that, oh, the model is going to be better. The model doesn't get better. The model that gets better because there is a team of 20 engineer and researcher with hundreds of thousands or thousands of extremely expensive GPUs that are being improved. And that's why, for example, ChatGPT is stuck in time in 2021 or this kind of thing. It doesn't learn anything. So the kind of idea of a runaway AI that's going to like invade the web and learn from it and whatnot, it's amazing science fiction, makes for great plots, but at least currently there is no runaway. It requires so much resources that's also why I think there is a lot of marketing behind it. That you cannot just like release it. It doesn't work like this, technically speaking, at the moment. I'm not saying it's not theoretically possible, but there is no interest for it. And in terms of regulation, I don't know in the whole world, but at least in Europe, you cannot harvest organ for money. We have international treaties on biological weapons. We can say no to things we don't think as a society are positive. So yeah, so we can also in Europe, in France, you cannot have a gun. So we have different things, and it doesn't mean that because in Europe an individual doesn't have a gun, we get invaded instantly by foreign forces. So I think regulation is a choice, and it does include competition. It does handle this with other means too. Yeah, I see your hand, Todd, your two hands.
I think that is part bullshit. And the reason for that is partly the Intergovernmental Climate Report UN thing coming out today. If what you were saying was true, we wouldn't need that report. So that, you know, that's just hitting us over the hammer. Now, you're sitting in a center of bureaucracy, and let me make very clear, what the EU has done in so many areas is absolutely fantastic. So I'm not saying that even international laws and regulations can't happen. They can, and they do, and it's amazing. No question about that. But when you come to something like this, there's a couple of things behind it that I think means we truly cannot stop it. One is the inertia. Second is that politicians, and we are, other than, you know, maybe China and Russia, we are living in mostly democratic countries to some degree, where politicians have some say, and these politicians understand politics. They do, you know, we're sitting here, 5 guys, unfortunately just guys, and we can't even define what AI is. You know, you're saying it's one thing, Mark is asking about strong AI, and these are, I'm not saying we should know, because these definitions do change, but to expect politicians and the general electorate to understand the different notions of machine learning, large language models, AI, hard AI, soft AI, strong AI, weak AI, you know, speaking to your watch versus asking the system, you know, who should I vote for? Just like the web was an amazing, you know, you remember the Declaration of Independence for cyberspace that happened along the early web? Beautiful, powerful stuff. And then it became useful. The Hypertext Conference, It's basically 3 people who go there every year. It's Mark Anderson, me, and someone else. That's how it feels. It's tiny and it's important. But because the web has become a real thing, the people who care to look at it, same thing. The term AI is going to disappear faster than we can believe. You know, there's going to be an avatar, an agent, there's going to be a Siri, there's going to be I did this today. Just like the metaverse, VR, XR, AR, that's going to disappear also in a few years because you just put on a headset. And with VR, excuse me, AI, you're just going to talk to it or write to it. Our job, obviously, is to make that as responsible as possible. But it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Come to London and we will arm wrestle over that one, but only with my good arm. My left shoulder is a bit bad.
Yeah.
The only way forward I see is twofold. Number one is what we're doing, having dialogue with it with a wider group of people. Number two, make stuff, prototype. I consider my own stuff a prototype. It just happens to be at pixel level, because it ships. It's still a prototype. You have to experience it anyway. It's definitely an important discussion, and if it was up to me, I'd probably want to have my career in the early 80s with a Mac. Those were relatively simple time compared to now, but of course it didn't feel simple then, did it? So yeah, it's all very interesting.
I thinking of simplicity. I put a link way back in the chat to. I don't know why I've not found it before, but it's a 1966 talk by Ted Nelson. In the vein of what were things like before we knew what they were, that I found quite interesting to listen to. It's not particularly good audio, and clearly there were slides with it, which you can hear the audience react to, which have been lost, but I would suspect were probably some of Ted's homemade drawings. But it would have been these, and it's on the Internet Archive, so it's not going on now. At least it's sort of saved to a degree for posterity.
I'm about to find a link to a video about the augmented conversation. It's something a guy named David E. Smith has been working on for a while. I think he has a company called Crochet. And he's very inspired by Doug, and it's really this work is really speaking to how we can use AI to augment our conversation. So how can augmented reality actually move us from the personal computing to the collective computing, which I think is super, super important, super interesting. So I'll find that in a second and put it in the chat when I do.
Because I've starting a job as I am, and shortly with a university, part-time job with a university group, looking at, as it happens, chemistry and electronic notebooks, which sounds very workaday, but what's really quite interesting is trying to pin anyone down to sort of say, well, what should AI do for us in this? And put another way around, what's the role of the human? Now we have all this AI wonder that, if it can't do it today, soon we'll be able to do all this for us. So what is the role of the human? What do we do in this that is worth us doing, given that the AI will eventually do it better than us? And I think, which is an interesting question to ask. And that's not, it's not trying to make a false combativity with sort of AI concepts, but simply thinking, because we build so many things at the moment that people don't use because, in effect, we automated the wrong part and no one's really interesting. So another great big thing gets stood up and nobody uses, and it moulders away. And there was some interesting code, and then we move on. But if you try and deliver on what people have been asking for, it is quite interesting to think where you turn it around, where the sort of human input fits.
I have a real comment on that because of what I'm doing right now. So as you know, Mark, I'm doing corrections, and some of it is about my language. I don't write academically enough. So of course, I've run my thesis through ChatGPT, and of course, it's vastly improved it.
Yeah, I could imagine. Yep.
So what I have been doing, I've done a few things, two different things. One, I take a paragraph of text that I've written that I understand is a bit too personal, and it rewrites it, and then I copy a few sentences back. Of course, I'll tell my examiners maybe. But then what I've also done, and this I've clearly marked, I ask ChatGPT how certain things are done or what certain things are, and I put it in and I attribute it to ChatGPT, which is interesting too. And it's kind of an interesting way to find out what knowledge is out there. For instance, the actual mechanism to store metadata in a PDF. I'm having a hard time to find, so I asked ChatGPT. Didn't give me a good answer, but the web didn't either. So that means my next step is now emailing some humans about it. So it is going to be a very iterative process of where it is. But one of the really nice things, of course, with this kind of stuff is making things more verbose and more compressed. And for some of it, that can be done. And obviously for other things, it can't really be done. But yeah, Fabian, sorry.
So I haven't read what ChatGPT gave you back for your thesis, and I'm relatively confident it did not improve it. I think what happened is your interpretation of its output has been useful, and you have improved it. I could probably take some bones, like actual bones, and throw it and give some meaning to it. Hopefully you would trust me enough that some of the input I would give you, you would find it useful, and then you would improve it enough. But I think it's the back and forth of interpretation from a smart person that improves the outcome. It's more of a provocation, like what a bot or a chatbot or a large or even small language model gives you back. So I think the usefulness depends on the ability of the person to use it, at least as much on the actual output of the thing. So I'm not saying it's useless. I'm just trying to insist that a lot of the value comes for your efforts and yourself, not just the model.
In terms of language, there's no question it improved it, because a lot of this nonsense in academia is gatekeeping. That's how I see it. Got to do the right formatting, the right font. You got to do the right listing. You got to do the right this, that. All fields have their own gatekeeping, so fair enough. But I think it'll be very, very interesting where you do your best, and it'll present it in the way that the reader wants to read it. Of course, there may, in many cases, be important differences, which is why you really need to keep the original, so to speak.
But the very fact that you mentioned it's an improvement shows that you are able to judge it. And again, I think that's where a lot of the, how do you say, not the value, but the expertise come from. You being able to say it's better because it's more direct is a value judgment on its output. And that's where, let's say, your intelligence or the value comes from, is you being able to say, oh yeah, it's actually better. Not just the fact that it's better, it's like, oh, it's maybe shorter, more direct, but yeah, I think there is a lot of this to that comes from the feedback from, or the interpretation again of the user.
Right. When you've been
sorry, just really quickly, Mark. When I say better, I mean better in academic writing. It is better for that framing. Sorry, Mark, please continue.
I was going to say, well, when you said you've been sort of giving it text and and then looking at what it's given back, what's the interaction mechanism? Do you just sort of give it a block of text and said, can you summarize this, or how does the process work?
For some reason, it's not loading for me right now, but I take the text here and then I put a prompt, rewrite in academic language.
Okay. Yep. Understood. Yep. Fair enough. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant question, by the way, Mark, because I think that really goes to what Fabian was talking about. What control do we have over these prompts, or whatever they're going to be called in the future, right? How much can I say? Can I maybe say, write this in the style of Wendy Hall, 1980s? Or is it just write it in British academic style, or write it in American academic style? And also, is it just going to be plain text writing, or will I be able to have little checkboxes on the side to really tune how it works? It's going to be amazing. I could imagine that once we have our virtual environments working, you can literally push and pull on, you got this right to this degree. I don't know. It's going to be an amazing future.
Here's an interesting thought. Here you mentioned that would be a way in which all that cleverness could be used to help create the sort of dynamic text you've been talking about, and some of the stuff sort of Fabian showed with using, well, the kind of things we see now in sort of Jupyter Notebook and things like that. In other words, sort of saying, right, I've broadly put the bones in it here. I can point you to some background stuff. I wonder, I suspect it might get quite good at finding areas where it could effectively put in useful explanations or expansions. And essentially, if it's doing it for you, and then you're looking at the end and said, that's great or that's rubbish, but it might be able to, in that small context, do some quite interesting things. That's an interesting idea.
Oh yeah, I was just going to build upon what you were talking about in terms of being able to reference any writer. I mean, as long as they're within the training data, I mean, you can do a lot of that now. There's been apps popping up called like hidden, what was it, historical figures. You can chat with anybody in, not anybody, but any of these historical features. This is just value arbitrage, because it's not really doing much other than just taking your prompts and sending it over to ChatGPT with a little prompt engineering. But the interesting thing around, of course, this is happening in art as well, right? Where you, with Midjourney and the different stable diffusion, you put the name of the artist. But what is related to what you were talking about in going from Midjourney 4 to Midjourney 5, it actually is doing the prompts differently, where it's looking more for natural language, whereas before with version 4, you could just put in just the different elements of things that you want separated by commas. And now they've upgraded the the engine, so that it's actually looking for you to give much more detailed explanation and more of a prose prompt style. And the implication is that now with a version 5 of Midjourney, if you just put in maybe a one-word prompt, whereas before you could get amazing things, now it's not quite as interesting, because they're getting more sophisticated in the ability to take in a ton of information about it and do it and really create exactly what you want, or something more closely. So I thought that was interesting, in how the model is changing and prompt engineering is changing along with it.
Yeah, that is absolutely very interesting. So here's an example that just happened. So instead of "it turned out that blah, blah," it was discovered that the data necessary to generate, I mean, look at this. This stuff below the line here is what it wrote. I wrote the crap above it. There's no argument. There is a few things I would tweak, but not a lot.
Yeah,
Are you
I see
using
it has the same.
plan, by the way?
What's that?
Are you using the pro plan or using the free?
This one I think is the playground, but I do have I do pay a little bit of credits.
Okay, so but is that 4 or is that 3.5?
This one is this 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but also this is not running today, so I'm wondering what's going on here. I was trying to make a picture of us. Virtual reality with 6 people with screens by Vermeer.
Well, I think AI gets much as the US sort of comes on stream. A good time to use AI for us, OpenAI, is in the morning. It may just be overload.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. But by the way, I don't know if this is going to load. Let's see if it does. But I want to show you a few DALL-E examples, which are kind of illustrative of what it's capable of now, because it most certainly isn't perfect. Let me just see if it manages, because the other one just did. Sometimes it's slow at the last few
It
seconds.
didn't think to put the horse in a spacesuit.
Yeah, you see, Mark, that's the whole point exactly of the prompt engineering, how you can say, okay, this is annoying.
Yeah, I was joking.
No, I don't think that, I'm not taking that as a joke, but look at this. I wrote this because 4 of our 7 Ukrainians left this week. It's tough. So, you know, here are the boys. These are all, including this weird one here, photograph. But all I wrote was 2 boys upset because one of them is leaving in a house with packing boxes by Claude Monet, right? And then I changed it to this. I had a different kind of illustration style. So there's a ton of assumptions going on. So, but some of this is pretty amazing. You know, I was wearing a blue blazer yesterday and a white shirt, and I was drinking coffee. The fact that I was having a drinking coffee from a small cup, it didn't quite understand the small cup. And I did in a specific style, but look how messed up these faces are, right? And I don't think they had those coffee cups then, but you know, and then I went photographic style. It's a bit scary, isn't it?
Wow. This is Dolly 2?
Dolly, I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
check.
The base version. Yeah.
So here is by Van Gogh. Obviously, these are all technically brilliant, but they look horrible. So I've been playing, and it's still using our current headset notion. I wanted something more futuristic. So then I moved over to someone working on a computer, and that just got, you can see, a bit messy. And then towards the end, I'm very happy with this one for Man Using iPad by Vermeer. This shouldn't be possible, should it?
Wow. As an artist, it would be really frightening to me if that's how I was making my money. But I mean, I think what's going to happen is the artists who are able to use the AI tool along with their artistic genius are the ones that are going to be the most sought after.
When I was studying advertising design and art at Syracuse University in upstate New York in the early 90s, I met one of the ILM guys doing a presentation, and my teacher was so excited to show my work to him. And he said, "Oh, this is really good, but what level of control do you have?" Because I was doing 3D stuff that was very arty. And I think when it comes to commercial art, that's really, really key. As you know, like we're talking about changing prompts, like really nice Vermeer iPad, to change the background into being something different. You can't really do that just by a text prompt yet. Not exactly what you want. So I think you're exactly right, David. It'll be interesting to use it maybe for storyboarding, and maybe you get lucky. But then again, for the camera and a model for a shoot, you're not going to get lucky with every shot either, are you? So how it'll pan out will be really, really fascinating. So this is not working today.
By the way, ChatGPT-4 is going to be able to interpret images. So you can actually just upload an image and ask what's in the image. It'll tell you what's image. Oh, I want the image prompt to do something like that. Tell me, you know, how many ping pong balls are in this image, or tell me something that's surprising in this image. What's funny about this image? It's going to be really interesting mixing prompts where the prompt is image plus text.
Yeah, the analysis thing is interesting. Of course, some of that can be done by weaker AI today. There are apps on the iPhone you can point and it'll count how many trees there are and that kind of stuff, which is very, very useful. But there is something that Paul Smart talked to Mark Anderson in the community about, how the brain is basically a prediction machine. If things are as predicted, we don't get any notification of it. But what was interesting, what you said there, David, of is there something unusual? In the olden days, we had Google alerts and stuff. So I think that's a really good use case. You're saying have certain things be analyzed, and if there is an outlier or something different, this could be a very good alarm or something for us. Fabian, your hand is up.
Yeah, well, just to clarify a bit that why I insist or I'm being negative is what I worry for is a bit the loss of control. So it's the outcome themselves are exciting. Going from here to what's come next, I think again we're wary, not worried, just being cautious of extrapolation, basically. But yeah, what I want, and that's also why I mentioned the prototype integration with Nextcloud, Collaborat, this kind of thing, is I want this kind of tools and even better ones, but being able to understand how they work, and that people can't not would tell me how not to use them, and that I can use them offline within, let's say, improve on them, let's say. So that's the whole control aspect that I keep on hammering, or maybe repeat a little bit too often, but that's the part where I see the biggest challenge. Actually, ironically enough, more than just, let's say, technical improvement of the models. I'm confident they're going to improve in terms of size and capabilities, and so. But I cannot relinquish control. Basically, it goes against both like privacy and prototyping.
So this is where I want to give you a hug. So another reason to come to London or stay away, depending on what you think about that. Doug was always about augmenting the fighter pilot, not someone who sits in the back of the plane. And every time you have finer control, it does mean, in effect, more effort to an extent, doesn't it? If you want to have real fine control going around the city, you take a bicycle. If you don't want to have control, you take the bus, right? It's probably going to be the same with AI, that a lot of it will just be so damn convenient that it won't give you the control you want. And in many cases, that'll be absolutely fine. But I really think that our job is to build, let's call it the interfaces for average knowledge workers, not necessarily designers or programmers, but people who gives a real big deal about their work, that they can get that control. I did the bookbinding course 2 weeks ago. Some of you have been told many times. And really, here it is. It's fantastic. One of the things that came out of it for me was the idiot who said that only the poor worker blames his tools, never had to cut with a blunt knife. You know, it's such a fundamental false sentence. But I think in our culture, outside of a few specific things, it's really seen as a truism. You know, when I mention this fantastic display, I'm always a bit embarrassed that I invested in it. But for crying out loud, I spend most of my workday here, and I don't want to have another stroke, so I don't want my neck to be going like this all the time. Why do I culturally feel embarrassed by this? But if I bought some really expensive sneakers, it'll be, oh, that's cool. Rant over. And I think I agree with you, Fabienne, on every single point. So I apologize for moving your points down to the point where I agree with them.
I had something to say, but I forgot it in listening to you, so I'll come back to it when it comes back.
Yeah, fair enough. And also, yeah, we're way over actually. All I can say is thank you guys. We are doing it on the 4th of October. Fabienne, let's keep talking offline about demo day. I just think we need to put a stake in the ground, maybe decide who the most important people who are not in the core community are, who should be there physically. Maybe Andrea, and just email and say, pick a date. And, you know, so they can choose, and then we can see if we can accommodate rather than the other way around. What do you think?
This is a in-person event and virtual as well?
Hope so, yes.
Okay, great. And when are you targeting for demo day? More or less?
In a month or two or something, Fabienne, is that right?
Sure. I mean, especially if we do it with people who are a bit closer, then I imagine that we don't have to plan too much ahead. But yeah, ideally, if it's in October, then we don't want to do it in September. We need it like in a month or two indeed. And it could definitely be possible to accommodate online. We would just have to set up some rules, and maybe I think it's great actually if we can do it online, because it means we would be forced to have some video conversation and thus some recording. And I think being able to do, for example, half an hour check where after half a day for us, for example, and the beginning of the day for people on another time zone, then we say a bit what we've tried to do, what we've done so far. So I think that would definitely actually help for us to structure a bit.
So yeah, no, definitely parts of it will be online, but this is what I'm about to send. Are you happy with this, Fabian? Copying you in.
Yeah. Do you remember that Adam was also quite positive? So might want to see also. He mentioned he had a good idea of piggybacking on another event. For example, there is a tech conference or research conference in a place that is central to us all. So maybe also, yeah, that's something to consider.
Oh, I'm going to show you something before we go, actually. That looks completely irrelevant, but it's not. Have a look at this.
Yeah, I've seen it.
What is it? Oh, wow. Okay. That's
AI.
cool.
It's
Nice.
cool. It's cool because it really fits that workflow, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and you have the thing that Ted Nelson stuff missed a lot. You have really good import and export of the product. You know, you put it in, you take it out. Simple. So it's like a high-powered tool. It's got so many analogies to knowledge work. It's crazy, but super cool, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
All
I
right.
remember what I was going to say, by the way. In it, I think you had said something about it being creating better interfaces, and I read an article recently that was saying that the next step of the web, the next stage of the web, is going to be revolutionizing the interface, which I think is actually probably right on. I mean, we've already got blockchain to do the storage part. We've got AI working on logic. Now AI is working on the interface with generative. Yeah, it's pretty interesting times. Metaverse would be revolutionizing this as well.
So guys, before you go, in terms of the symposium, it's on a Wednesday, I think, right? Should we do a 2-day like we did, or and if so, what should the second day be, before or after?
Okay. I mean, if I'm coming out there, 2 days is better than 1 day for sure, from my perspective. I'm wondering, the other thing that I want to come out for, I'm not sure exactly what it is, hopefully it won't be conflicting, is the ARC forum that Jordan Peterson and other people are putting together as an alternative to the World Economic Forum vision.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Okay, no comment.
Well, anyone who's putting out alternative visions, I think we need to have alternative visions. The World Economic Forum may have one, but we need to have different ones. And the thing that I like about what he's doing, I'm not saying I agree with everything he said. I definitely agree with some things, but I like the fact that they're actually trying to source them for people. Their initiative for the first 8 months is simply to ask some open-ended questions to as many people as possible, and to aggregate that information and see what comes out, which I think it is the right approach, as opposed to some group of think tank people getting together and trying to impose their view on the populace. The policy needs to have input into the process of where our future is going. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going necessarily for him, or I might not even go, but that approach of going bottom up on anything is a lot more interesting to me than top down approaches.
Yeah, that's cool. So there's two things. One thing for Fabienne, and then another thing for all of you. This is how I'm planning on putting it. Colorama, right? Okay. And Fabienne, shall we send out a message to the wider community about next Monday?
Yep, yeah. So I will insist a bit to get the description, title and description.
Yeah, please. Yeah, send that, and then I'll forward it. That'd be very cool.
Yeah. Well, then I will wish you all a lovely rest of the day and a wonderful week, and I'll see you then.
Absolutely. It's really good being able to have conversations about AI among a group of people who have interest in, making the world better as well. Just saying, thank you.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to talk. All right. See you on Monday. And Fabienne, you're going to send me a bio suggestion and I'll forward. Okay. Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.